Happy Arvo. How you doing? Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited about this one. This seems interesting because I like graphs, basically. Australia versus United States. 10 quick facts as graphs. Okay? Little slideshow. And right off the bat, interesting kind of niche fact. Foreign-born share of the population. Much higher in Australia. I honestly would have thought it would be higher in the US. But 30%, almost a third of Australians, foreign-born. Whereas in America, 14%. So a lot of immigration to Australia. And recent immigration too, because 30% of the entire, that's almost kind of baffling. 30%. Honestly, even 14% seems pretty high. All right. Interesting fact right off the bat. Let's see. Voltage. You guys run on 230 volts for your outlets. I don't know anything about electricity, but we have 120 here in America. Not the most interesting graph, but interesting fact. What are the implications of this? So America 120 is safer, but it seems like Australia's 230 is more efficient, less resistive over distance. We have to use thicker wiring, less energy wasted in Australia as heat in the wiring. Interesting. Time zones. There are 3 in Australia and 6 in the United States. I think 2 of them, like one of them is just for Alaska and one is just for Hawaii. Because I really just normally think of the 4 time zones in America, but that's for the continental US. Whereas you guys have 3. Okay, considering what I just said, I think there's a whole separate one for Alaska and another one for Hawaii. Similar amount, which just shows, 4 versus 3 as far as the continental US. So just goes to show how big Australia is, really, for only having 20 million people. 27 million now. 30% of which, so about 9 million, foreign-born. Highest mountain. Look at that. I never thought to actually look this up. So this is in meters. 6,190 meters. To be honest, I don't even know what the mountain is. Mount McKinley. Okay, that's the tallest mountain in America. In Australia, Mount Kosciuszko in the Snowy Mountains. 6,000 compared to 2,000. Still a high mountain, but of course, Australia relatively more flat in general than America. Although I live in the flattest part of America. It's unbelievably flat in Indiana. I've lived in other parts of the US and wow, coming here I was kind of confused, like, how did it get so flat here? Holy shit. It's just way different. You can just see for miles. Coastal population, 87% in Australia and 40% of US, still pretty high in the US. Now, when we say coastal, does that mean is all of California coastal population, for example? I don't know exactly how that's being quantified. Like how close to the coast do you have to live to be coastal? Regardless, way more in Australia. Still quite a high distribution here in America. 40%, that's almost half of everybody lives on the coast. There's a huge, basically where I live, it's pretty sparse as far as population. And then, obviously gets more dense toward the coast. That's where most people want to live, huh? You get the beach. The beach is nice. Metric versus imperial? What kind of a fact, what is this showing? Metric use as a percent. So this is an interesting fact. 30% of America things, I don't know, 30% of things are written as metric in the United States and 100% in Australia. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing. I mean, obviously, when we do like, science and other things, for the most part, you use the metric system here. And a lot of things, behind the scenes use metric, such as at hospitals and stuff. They'll weigh you in kilograms. Then they'll tell you your weight in pounds, but they'll mark it down in the chart in metric. Voting turnout, 90% Australia, which you have to vote in Australia. So I would have thought that was like closer to about 100%. But I guess 10%, no matter what, you're still going to have some number of people who can't vote for whatever reason. So, or who break the law and don't vote. So about 90% compared to US 60%. I was just looking into this a little bit deeper. I found I think it's an interesting graph showing every state. And it shows that Minnesotans have the highest turnout with about 70%. And I think that's Hawaii at the bottom. I assume that people in swing states tend to vote more. You kind of feel like your vote counts more. But an average of just 60%, which is always kind of a disturbing thing to think about. And that's 60% of people who can vote, So that other 40% that doesn't vote could wildly change any election if all of them woke up and decided to vote that day. Who knows which presidents we would have? Marsupial species. US 1. Australia 200 plus? What? Australia has about 250 marsupial species? I would have thought like 5. So we have one. What one does America have? I don't even know. The Virginia opossum. Okay. That's a hilarious graph. We have one. I can't even. There it is. 1. You guys have 250. 250. This one's stupid. Official language. The United States has an official language. That's an interesting fact. You guys don't have an official language. But represented as a graph is weird. That is weird. I just looked it up just to confirm. I wouldn't have thought that. There's no official language at the federal level. Obviously, I would have thought it was English. All right. Interesting. Is that to be respectful of the Aboriginals? Perhaps? Because obviously English is dominant in Australia. Longest fence. In America, 0. My fence is longer than 0. I guess it depends what you consider a fence. Because this says the US-Mexico border, it stretches 3,000 kilometers. Australia still has it beat. 5,600. And it's the dingo fence. Stretches all the way across Queensland, New South Wales, and South Australia. What the hell? I have heard of this. But geez, I didn't realize it's that frickin' long. Holy shit. That almost sounds impossible. If you said, hey, you need to make this fence. From here to there. So you're out of your frickin' mind. Well, that was fun. Definitely some obscure type facts, which I always appreciate. Anyway, interesting. Hopefully you thought that was interesting. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for watching.